Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're doing a roundtable, but today it's a Patreon roundtable. And as a perk for our Patreon supporters, we've decided to bring Patreons in and talk about whatever is of interest to them in this blog or vlog format. Today, our very first episode, we're joined by Matt. Matt, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. So this is a little bit different, and this is something that Jason brought up as an idea, and I thought, that'd be kind of fun. Let's get some folks on here and talk about stuff that's of interest to them. So as you know, the theme behind the Military Arms channel is military small arms, if you will, or clones thereof. But my tastes and Jason's tastes, and I gather from your conversation, pre-show, we have a lot of interesting or interests that are similar outside of the military collecting circle.
Yes.
And so what is your current interest in a rifle, a cartridge I'm looking for here for larger game like deer and stuff like that? What you mentioned a cartridge, and I want to see if that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so the 6.5 PRC. Right?
Oh, there we go.
It seems amazing. So my perspective, everybody's always after the kind of one cartridge that will rule them all and can do everything in the world, right? Take my bear, take my elk, take my deer, coyote. I think PRC is probably that cartridge, at least up to black bear. I don't know if I would use it on a brown bear. I don't plan on hunting that though, personally. I'm much more, I'm not a trophy hunter. But I think that 6.5 PRC, I love the ballistic coefficient of it. Mm-hmm. The soft recoil relative to other calibers that deliver like the same energy downrange, with, less, ballistic capabilities, in my opinion, for what you get out of it. It's a highly efficient cartridge. I like efficiency. I have a minor in economics, so efficiency always makes me happy. So that kind of always, I see 7 millimeters and I think, oh, that's great. I see 6.5s. Even that 6mm Creed and 22 Creed are very interesting to me, and I'll probably get into them someday. But want to get into this 6.5 PRC for a while first and see how that works.
Yeah, I'm a big 6.5 PRC guy. I remember when we first, what was the first rifle that was chambered in that? That was the Browning 8 bolt, right?
Yeah, so that Browning that had come in used. And then I was like looking at what is 6.5 PRC? Because again, I wasn't really following those cartridges
right
from the beginning to where they are now. And then we had discovered they had a 300 PRC and a 6.5 PRC. Well, looking at the 300 PRC is more like a modernized 300 Win Mag. And then the 6.5 PRC, it's almost like a 6.5 Creedmore Magnum.
That's what I was going to say, 6.5 Creedmore Magnum.
Yeah. Like it's taking that Creedmore and just upping it a little bit more. What is really cool about that round, when we were shooting it out of that particular gun, which mind you was like a pencil barrel.
Yeah, it's got a barrel profile like my pinky.
Right. And it's like 22 or 24 inches. The thing was literally just clover leafing the rounds. Like it was just this laser beam wherever we pointed it. And the sound on steel that it made
is unreal.
Just a massive smack. Yeah. At 350 yards, the report back was impressive.
Right.
So,
and the lack of bullet drop.
Yep, the lack of bullet drop and the fact that it fits into a short action, which is also nice, where the 300 PRC is a long action cartridge. 6.5 is like the maximum for a short action. So you can build a really powerful short action rifle.
Yep. And that's what I thought was really cool about it, because it's like so 6.5 Creedmore was my baby. Like when that came out, I shot it. I waited until factory ammunition was available. So when it first came out, everybody's talking about it, but factory ammo wasn't really a thing yet. It was out there, but it was very hard to get. And most people were home rolling it. And I'm not big into reloading anymore. So I waited. And then when the commercial Hornady ammo and stuff started hitting the market, then I picked up my first 6.5 Creedmore, and I was just madly in love. You remember when that happened? I wanted everything at 6.5 Creedmore. I was done with 308. I wanted to learn everything I could about 6.5 Creedmore. And then the 6.5 PRC came along. We stumbled across that Browning that came into copper. And it just hung on the wall forever.
Yeah.
And you brought it out one day to shoot it. We're like, oh, let's just shoot this thing, see what it's all about.
Yep.
And that's when we fell in love with it. And yeah, insane accuracy. I mean, the barrel profile is a pencil profile, and it's fluted. So like all the no-nos for accuracy, this gun has all the no-nos, and it still shoots lights out. But yeah, you have that really silly 24-inch barrel. But you need that longer barrel to get the velocity out of it, right? Mm-hmm. So Matt, maybe you can help me out here because, I got all these numbers bouncing around in my head because I keep so many things going at one time. Any given week, I got like 5 different guns we're working with. But
Yeah.
6.5 PRC is like 40% more power. Is it that high? It's like 30 or 40% more power than 6.5 Creedmoor?
I think it's
Like
in
maybe the
between
case
30 to
volume.
40%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the
that
case
sounds
volume
right.
I'm getting at. But yeah, so it's significantly more. Now, you're only talking a couple hundred feet per second, and people kind of scoff at that. People will say, well, what's the difference between 3,000 and 3,200 feet per second aside from 200 feet per second? Well, some people just go, well, it's only 200 feet per second. That's nothing. Now, in the world of ballistics, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And so that can mean a big difference, like with the 6.8 that we were playing with the 6.8 by 51 with that super high pressure. Yeah, you're only picking up a couple hundred feet per second out of a much shorter barrel.
Yes.
And your bullet drop is like 9 feet less at 1,000 yards with just a couple hundred feet per second extra.
Yeah.
So it's a massive difference. And like you said, Matt, the recoil, it's a little bit more brisk, but I would put it where the 6.5 Creedmoor is less than 308. I would say 6.5 PRC is kind of 308-ish, maybe just a wee bit hotter.
Sure.
But you can shoot it all day long, right? With the right stock. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can shoot 308 all day long, really.
Yeah, I can.
And then to get just the better ballistics, almost like 270 Win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost 270 Win ballistics out of basically a 308 recoil.
Right.
I mean, just why not, right? And the short action again, too, like Jason said.
And the beautiful thing is it's using 6.5 Creedmoor bullets. So if you are a reloader, right, it's not a 6.5 Creedmoor case. It's its own case. I can't remember what the parent case is or if there is one. So if I recall right, the 6.5 PRC and the 300 PRC were developed by, that was George Gardner, right? GA Precision came up with them. They were PRC cartridges. Obviously, it's in the name. He developed them for PRC competition and his rifles, and then it just kind of petered out from there. And that where the
well, I want to say Hornady was the one that introduced a lot of it. Like their name's been, they were the start, just like the 6mm ARC and all those cartridges were all like Hornady. I want to say started cartridges. But what I really enjoyed about that thing was how flat shooting it was. It's just like earlier, Matt, you were talking about looking into 6mm Creedmoor and all that. 6mm Creedmoor is like my absolute favorite. I love that round. And it's essentially a modernized 243. You've got folks that'll say, well, why would I get that? It's only a few hundred feet per second faster than a 243. And it's like, right. But I can go up in heavier bullets and things like that, given the case profile and all that. Plus the recoil on 6mm Creedmoor is like almost nothing. It's super flat shooting, and it hits really hard as well. And don't get me wrong, like 243 and 300 Win Mag and all these other cartridges, they're fine. If you've already got rifles chambered in them and you like them, great. But there's a lot of folks that don't want to move away from those, and then they insult or don't even think it should exist, modernizing those cartridges a bit. And that's where I love the 6.5 PRC, the 6mm Creedmoor. The 22 Creedmoor is quite impressive too, because you're sending those heavier 22 cal bullets at almost 22-250 velocities, but you have that ability, whereas 22-250 was a varmint cartridge, so you're sending those 35 to 55 grain bullets at blazing fast speeds. 22 Creedmoor starts sending the, like, I want to say, we'll call it like 68 grain to like 77 or 80 some grain. I want to say there might even be some 90 grain. Didn't 224 Valkyrie get up into a 90 grain?
90 something.
Yeah, you had 88 was real common because they're trying to figure out the bullet weight
77,
and twist
88,
rate.
90, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas 22 Creedmoor, you can launch
90s.
those heavier 22 cal bullets at more, better efficiency and all that. And same thing, zero recoil. And watching one of those in action is pretty cool because, like the 22-250, they're just little laser beams out to distance just because they're flying so fast. I've got that one 22-250 with the 24-inch barrel that's sailing at 4,000 feet a second. So,
and what blows my mind about that 4,000 feet per second is when you suppress that rifle, it's surprisingly quiet.
Yeah.
And this is what's kind of weird. And, this is just observations. This isn't science, right? But it seems like the smaller the bullet, the better suppression you get in terms of not just gun report, but bullet noise moving through the air, right? So as an example of that, 45 ACP and 230 grain ball rounds are inherently subsonic, and therefore, you don't have to go out and buy special purpose ammo to shoot a suppressed 45 ACP. But when I shoot 147 grain 9mm suppressed, which is also subsonic, that tends to be more quiet than 45 ACP. And the only difference is basically bullet, right? The weight and size of the bullet. And so it just seems like the 9mm is more quiet, and that 22-250 is really quiet as compared to a 308 that's suppressed. I was really shocked by that. So it's I mean, you're getting the sonic boom, but there's something else there.
Well, it's just like those big bores. And Matt, I don't know if you've ever messed around with big bores like 458 SOCOM, 450 Bushmaster, all those, 4570. You suppress those and they're terrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who made the silencer. They're just really loud because of the large bore of the silencer, letting a lot of those gases just flow right out of there.
You got this big fist-sized bullet moving through the air.
Right.
The air's just going around that bullet, clapping behind it. You know, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, but the bigger the bullet seems to make more noise.
They hit like a ton of bricks, at short range, but they are a lot of fun to shoot. They let you know you're alive sometimes. The recoil on them is just like, that's... But I love the thumpers and all the oddball stuff. They're especially at the gun shop.
I took a 458 SOCOM out for deer season this year, and dropped my buck at about 80 yards with a 325 grain, and I suppress everything I shoot basically. And man, it's one of my favorite guns to shoot. It's just so fun. And then putting subsonic ammo in that 458 and hitting steel at 100 yards. The delay, and then of course the sound that you get from hitting that steel is just great.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you got that huge bullet, the boulder flying through the air. Because I want to say some of those are in the 450 to 500 grain for the subsonic for the
I think Black Butterfly makes a 600 grain.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. And there's been some YouTube videos of deer hunters shooting them at distance with those like 500-600 grain subs, and you literally just watching this thing arc all the way to them, and it hits with such authority. It just folds the deer over.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow.
Yeah, it's just like the old days of the Shiloh Sharps, the 45 110s and stuff.
Yeah.
They're shooting those big, heavy lead cast bullets, like 1,400 feet per second. You just see that big slug going out 1,500 yards, and it's like glistening in the sun. Whack, knocks a buffalo over.
Right.
Yeah. So I was looking up the 6.5 PRC, and Hornady introduced the cartridge, but I can't remember. My memory's telling me that George Gardner and GA Precision had something to do with it, right? I
want to say that's more along the lines of your 6 mils and 22 Creedmores.
Maybe that's what it was,
because those are big precision rifle competition cartridges.
I mean, that's what the PRCs were developed for, obviously. Right. I mean, like I said, it's in the name, but one thing that I remember, I picked up that Bagara because I had that really good luck with the 6.5 Creedmore Bagara. So I picked up the 1 in 300 PRC, and it just shot all over the place. I mean, we can't get that thing to settle down to save our lives. And so I just kind of abandoned 300 PRC, right? The recoil was brisk, and it didn't give me anything that 300 Win Mag didn't. And I already have my 300 Win Mags that I love.
Yeah.
So, and that I got 300 Win Mag and a gas gun. So
that's one of those, I want to say 30 cal. The reason why they have higher MOA guarantees back when companies would put MOA guarantees and whatnot, is just because the 30 cal projectiles, I think, are, again, I don't know the science behind it, but I want to say 30 cal projectiles are just inherently less accurate than 6 mil and 6.5 projectiles, given if you look at the shape of the bullets. Now, don't get me wrong, you got your boat tail hollow point match bullets and things like that, but your 6 mils and 6.5s are much longer, and more aerodynamic, it seems like, and they seem to shoot better and tighter compared to your 30 cal projectiles. So that I tried with that 300 PRC, your Bergara. I think the best I got out of that thing was just over 3/4 of an inch, and it wasn't consistent.
Right.
Whereas the 6.5, we were always able to consistently get 1/2 inch or something like that all the time. Whereas that thing was primarily 1 inch to 1.2.
Yeah. I was going to say it was over an inch for me, but on average, right? Yeah. You get the occasional, especially when you're shooting 3-shot groups to conserve ammo because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
The more rounds you fire, the more that group opens up, generally speaking. So, I was not impressed with the 300 PRC, not given what else is out there. But the 6.5 PRC blew me away because, the recoil is much more manageable. You can get it into short actions. And it is, got that lineage tracing it back to 6.5 Creedmore. So you're using these same bullets. Those bullets are inherently accurate, a long bearing service, great sectional density. They do really, really well. Those Hornady bullets do really, really well in soft tissue. Now, one gripe I have about Hornady, we've talked about, I think, in past videos, hunting videos, is that their bullets just explode on contact. Like that Axis deer I took down with the 6.5 Grendel.
Oh, yeah.
The bullet just grenaded. I mean, it liquefied the lungs and the heart, but the bullet just exploded. The Neil guy, 190 grain, 338 Lapua. Remember that?
Yeah.
I got that guy with 195 yards, hit him, and that bullet didn't make it out the other side.
It exploded.
It exploded.
I've had Hornady bullets where the jacket has separated in the barrel and just sent like a lead slug out there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, whereas like Federal makes their fusion load and a couple other hunting loads like that, where it's a bonded bullet, and those, like,
you always have something
one deer
to recover.
I shot in Tennessee with that fusion load. A nice mushroomed, almost fully intact. If you were to weigh it, it'd probably be just a few grains off from, some of the jacket maybe coming off of there. But other than that, it was still a solid projectile.
Yeah.
So I know, what's your favorite hunting load, Matt? If it doesn't necessarily have to be 6.5 PRC, but.
So I'll say when shooting prairie dogs, I don't mind when the bullets kind of explode like that. So
absolutely, that's what you want, right?
Yeah,
that's where your VMAXs and things like that come in. But
right, exactly. So I use a VMAX in the 223, and my son uses it in his 204 Ruger. Another great little screaming.
The 204 Ruger is
that's a great cartridge.
Yeah, so fun to shoot, and we suppress that, of course, and it makes it. Like you said, with 22-250, it really does quiet it down quite a bit. He's had shots where he hit two prairie dogs on the same mound, where he shot one, it exploded, and 2 seconds later, he was able to get the shot off on the other because it was suppressed.
Right.
Whereas, they probably would have gone into the hole if it wasn't. But other than that, I tend to use a variety of different ammo for the different guns. If I'm using like a 350 Legend, that's what my son tends to use for deer hunting. We do use a Hornady 165 grain. It's in the FTX. I use Black Butterfly. And I think, those are 325 grain for the 458 SOCOM. For the 6.5s, I'm still trying to find out which load it likes the best. So I haven't really settled on anything yet. I'm a little bit too early and for my Creedmore and my PRC, and having them to experiment with enough of the different ammos and loads to see what shoots the best. But I don't know what I'm going to land on. And they're not going to be they're going to be for hunting purposes. So whatever it is, it's going to have something. It's going to be a hunting purpose load. And once I try to find that bullet, just like in my prairie dog guns, I only try to feed it that bullet from then on out, right? So it just is always, it's consistent and tries to, it keeps that bore kind of tuned to that round. So I'm not sure what I'm going to use yet, but I like a lot of them so far. They're all doing great.
The 223 prairie dog thing was the most frustrating thing I've ever done.
If you got a wind like where were we at? Wyoming, I want to say. And the wind was just constant out there. Like you would just watch swirling. The round just dance around the mound. Whereas like 6.5 Creedmore out there was just right to it.
You can see the trace too. When you'd cross those wind patterns, you can see the trace, the bullet going out, and it's like, you see it just catch the wind and trace off. Like, come on.
Yep.
And so I found that anything really much past 150, 200 yards with 223 out there was just, you're just blasting away, hoping. And those prairie dogs are dumb, right? So I was out there. That's when I picked up that XCR on the way out to the prairie dog hunt from Brownells. Remember, I was shooting that thing at prairie dogs. And it's fun, but thank goodness 223 is much more affordable than, say, 6.5 Creedmore. Now, the best prairie dog hunt I ever went on was with Silencer Shop. They took us out years ago. And it was, I don't remember what state it was, Utah, Wyoming, one of them. But we went out there and they brought out like 20 cases of 6.5 Creedmore, all the brand new Ruger precision rifles, all outfitted with optics in their cans. And that was the most fun I've ever had prairie dog hunting, because we literally fired like $100,000 worth of ammunition. All of us that were out there, we didn't have to pay for a cent, But if you're buying the ammo, man, 223 is where it's at for prairie dogging. But if you really want to go have a good time, because I was knocking them over at 600 plus yards. I got a twofer at 200 or at 600 yards that was witnessed by two people. And all it was I saw a prairie dog, and gosh, what was that guy's name? He used to be the rep for Silencer Co. But anyway, he was on the spotting scope, and he called it out. I'm like, you on it? And he's like, yep. And the prairie dog's standing up, and I fired. And the second I fired, because it's only a couple second flight time, the second I fired, another prairie dog stood up behind the one I shot at. In that time, talk about the unluckiest prairie dog in the world. And that round hit both of them. They went two different directions. I wish I would have had a camera on the spotting scope, but we didn't. It was amazing.
It is a great time going prairie dog hunting. That's for sure.
And then it got really America after that, because then a bald eagle swooped in and started eating dead prairie dogs. And we had to quit shooting at them, at the prairie dogs. Yeah. The bald eagle was out there.
Oh, yeah.
So, but that was America. Here comes a bald eagle.
Yeah, that one prairie dog hunt was quite interesting. God, what was I had a really good time at that one Texas place with the first white-tailed deer with the 224 Valkyrie. Oh, that was really a lot of fun.
That was the Mossberg Ranch.
Yeah, and that was a really, really good time there. But watching that round perform was pretty good, you know. And
remember that two deer were shot, a doe and a buck, and that 224 made it through the doe. Right, she was like spraying corn out the other side of her chest, and then the buck, it didn't come out the other side.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, shooting no blood deer over the years, buck just seemed to be more dense everywhere, and they seem to hold. Like they'll get a good entrance in, but sometimes you won't get an exit.
Yeah. And you need that exit, right? Because without that exit, you don't get a blood trail. And if you don't knock them down and they run off in that Texas scrub brush, and you don't have something to track, it's easy to lose them. And so the entrance wound will seal up many times because you don't get a big blowout generally where it goes in, and the skin will just seal the hole and it'll just dribble blood. It's not enough to really track. If you blow it out the other side, it'll spray blood everywhere,
right?
Especially if it goes to the lungs.
Because I'm looking at this 22 ARC right now as almost like another 224 Valkyrie in a way. You know what I mean? They're talking that it's a 22-250 out of an AR-15 chassis, and it's like, I don't think so. You're close, but you're not 22-250. For whatever reason, that all my all-time favorite rounds, if you will, is that one.
What's the parent case on that one? What magazines are they using?
Well, that's the thing with the 22 ARC. You can use those like Grendel style magazines that have a slightly, not as exactly a 7.62 by 39 curve to them, but a slightly more aggressive turn. And then like the neck guides and things like that are a little bit more narrow, but it definitely seems to feed better. Like 6mm ARC feeds a lot better than 6.5 Grendel.
Yeah.
Whereas 22-250, you're basically stuck to an internal magazine because the taper of the case is so extreme that I don't think anybody's really developed a magazine for
that
it.
That 22-250 AR you had, who was that? That was the company that went out of business.
Olympic Arms.
Yeah,
that was the UMAR.
You remember that thing? And the mag well was cut in such a way, like it was hogged out just so you could get a 22-250 magazine that held, 5 rounds or something?
Yep, it was a 5-round magazine that was custom made by them, and they were like $110 a mag or something like that. That rifle was cool. I really regret getting rid of that one because I special ordered that thing. But like anything else, now you can't find those things because Olympic Arms, I don't think is in business anymore.
Yeah, that's too bad.
So
what other cartridges are you playing with, man?
So I'm just a fan as a range toy, if nothing else. 22 TCM to me is super fun. I like the 5.7 a lot, but that 22 TCM out of a 1911 platform, when it runs, it's a blast to shoot.
See,
there you go.
I've said that too.
There's the caveat, right?
Yeah. They got the toy springs in them.
Right. So it's just so light recoiling. You get that fireball. Everybody is wondering what you're shooting because why is there no recoil out of this gun that's sounding like an AR-15 almost?
Yeah.
But I use it in a bolt action platform as well. I had the barrel threaded and take that out prairie dogging. And, it's very ballistically similar to a 22 Hornet. I think it's roughly 2,800 feet per second out of the barrel with a 40 grain bullet. And I get excellent accuracy out of mine. Very good. When I do my part, and I normally shoot from sandbags when I'm out, right? So that helps. But it hits really hard. It puts them down. It's super fun. No recoil, of course, so you can just spot all of your hits right through your scope.
Yeah.
Which is really nice when you're out there by yourself sometimes prairie dog hunting, trying to see where maybe if the wind is throwing you left or right so you can see it. But I love the 6.5 Grendel as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've been watching you guys for a long time. I remember the videos you're referencing in the 224 Valkyrie and the Nogai and the Axis and that 6.5 Grendel. I mean, you've called it in a previous meeting with you years ago. You said it was deer poison, I think.
Yeah.
It plants
just
I was impressed by that Axis deer, how it leveled that thing.
And folded him up.
That's a big deer. You know what I mean? Like, and watching that Grendel work was like, wow, holy cow. I was impressed by that one.
It planted them. I was blown away by the damage that little cartridge did, because we dig in, you know, and we look at the organs and try to figure out what these bullets are doing. And like I said, it turned the lungs and heart into pure gelatin. I mean, the thing ran in a circle. Like, it just did a big donut and then fell over and its legs kicked and it expired.
Yep.
But it hit that thing. It sat him down. You remember when that bullet first hit him, it just took the wind out of him. He just dropped off his legs. He just dropped, and then he got up, ran in a circle, and died.
Yep.
But yeah, that's an incredible cartridge. And it's another cartridge that they just don't catch on, right? And I get it to a certain degree, but there's so many good cartridges that are coming out that the gun community turns its nose up at without even really giving it a chance. 30 Super Carry is a perfect example. 6.5 Creedmore, they still call it the 6.5 Needmore, and people say 308 superior. Like, no, it's not.
Right.
You know, it is maybe inside of 100 yards, but when you're out shooting at distance, the 6.5 Creedmore comes into its own. You know, it does have a purpose. Right. But people want to hang on to what they know. You know, they want 223 and 308, and I get that. I mean, there was a time in my life when I was saying, every gun I buy going forward is going to use a Stenag magazine just for, you know, magazine compatibility's sake. So I'm not out buying a bunch of magazines. I want everything in 9mm, 223, 45, and 308. Right. I think we've probably all gone through that phase if you collect guns. And then you get right back in. Well, check out this 30 Super Carry. Check out this 22 TCM. Check out this, 6.5 PRC. And next thing you know, you're off in the weeds again, looking at different stuff. But I really think that these new cartridges bring a lot to the table if people would just give them a chance and not poo-poo them right out of the gates and say, oh, what does it do the 308 or 30-06 or 270 Winchester doesn't do? Well, give them a chance. You'll find out.
Right, because I want to swing to a cartridge later on, but to swing back to your 22 TCM, isn't that a Rock Island bolt action?
Yes.
Same as the handgun that they have, that Rock Island 1911. What type of, are you having any, functional issues at all with it? Does it feed well? Does it?
So, there's two different stocks. There's the wood stock and then there's the polymer stock. I have the one with the polymer stock. I think the barrel length is actually 2 inches longer on that one as well. What's great though too is it takes the same magazines as the 1911 does. So if you have that double stack magazine 1911, you can have a 17 round bolt action. Cool. The only issue I had was the barrel wasn't absolutely free floated, so the stock was touching the barrel. So took that apart and sanded it down a little bit. Once that happened, I was getting 1 3/4 groups down to sub MOA with consistency. So and that's 5-shot groups. But it's been great. I haven't had ejection issues, any other issues really. It's been great. I wish the trigger was a little bit lighter, but it is what it is, and I'm not sure I'll really mess with